So I would like to call to the podium now our chair of the day, Andrew Morris, to take over today's meeting and introduce our guest speaker. Thank you.
Gives me great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Dr. David Horgan. Now, David is a man on a mission, and I'm sure that he would prefer, if he wrote this introduction speech, he would have said, could I please yield my time to David so he'd have more time for his presentation. He certainly is dedicated to this cause. David was inducted into the Rotary Club of Melbourne in December 2025 with the classification of Medical Health Services Psychiatry. David sees being introduced to Rotary by his sponsor, Dr Suresh Makandan, as a new dimension in his life, being surrounded by dedicated, friendly and like-minded people. He is a retired clinical associate professor of psychiatry who did his schooling and medical education in Dublin, going on to complete his psychiatric psychiatry training in a highly academic unit in Edinburgh, and has 6 specialist qualifications. David moved to Australia in 1980 with wife Rosvita and began working at the University of Melbourne and the Royal Melbourne Hospital. He was mainly involved in private practice as a last resort psychiatrist, treating severe depression and high suicide risk patients on an outpatient basis when treatment from other psychiatrists had failed. He is well known for his writings and lectures to thousands of GPs and colleagues about using multiple medications simultaneously combined with intensive patient contact. David received a special award from the University of Melbourne for teaching and recalls that his final year medical students were always very surprised to hear that if they wanted to save lives, they needed to know about the most common cause of death in adults under 50. David founded the Australian Suicide Prevention Foundation. He's a valued member of our Health and Ageing Committee and is also on the Australian Rotary Health Committee. I'm sure David's presentation will be informative and inspiring. Please welcome David. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. While we're getting the practicalities in order, I thought I should introduce myself because many of you perhaps don't know me, haven't talked to me. Sorry. I thought I should introduce myself since many of you don't know me, perhaps we haven't spoken. It reminds me of the lecturer traveling around the United States. Each town he goes to, it's the same lecture, on he goes to the next town. After a while, he says to his driver, you know, you've heard this lecture so often, you could give it. So next time I'm going to, nobody knows me. So sure enough, the driver stands around, has a drink, has a meal, and then is introduced as the lecturer. So on comes the slides, same comments. Any questions? Same questions, same answers. It's all going wonderfully well, until somebody asks a question that's never been asked before. And the guy on stage says, you know, that question is so simple, I'll get my driver in the front row to answer it. All right, so let's move on to something like that people don't talk about. And that is that if there was a plane crash every day in which 95% of people were injured and 5% died, we'd be horrified. That is what goes on, actually, only it's not the plane that does it, it's life. Yes, so in fact, if you want to open your phones, you can, if you so wish, or you can just listen to what I'm saying. Sorry, these bits are just the signs of me having had a misspent youth. And yes, for one reason or another, I found myself being the person to call when nothing else is going to work. So, as I would say to the medical students in Melbourne University, so the standard advice is call a crisis line. If I was running a service whereby call me, I'll talk to you for 10 or 15 minutes and that's it. When you're suicidal, there would be hell to pay basically professionally. The reality is that only between 3 and 10% of people do call a crisis line before they take an overdose, and or something similar. But 70 to 80% of people have indicated to their friends that there's something wrong, and nobody knows what to do. And it actually happens at an incredible frequency. It's hard to believe, but this is from the Australian Bureau of Statistics, that there are about 1 million Australians who have taken an overdose, have survived, and are still with us. And it just shows if you like, the extreme pain that goes on. Because if you like, point number one, the reason people attempt suicide is because the pain of living is intolerable for them and they believe it will never go away. So that's fundamentally why people attempt suicide. And I hope, well, I know, unfortunately, some of you here would have had depression. And depression has actually been described by the previous head of the College of GPs in Britain as more painful than kidney stones and more painful than a heart attack. And he had all three, except depression goes on for weeks and months, eating away at you. And unfortunately, 20 years ago, the death rate was the same as it is now. So whatever we're doing isn't working. And that's been talked about in the literature. So we need to talk about it so we get some publicity, but also do something. Phrased differently, instead of throwing numbers at you, every week in Australia, a bus full of people die from suicide, just over 60 a week. And every day, a plane full of people attempt suicide, mainly healthy young women. So the ordinary, high-functioning, healthy young woman running a business, running a career, looking after a family, somewhere between 180 and 250 attempt suicide. We don't know the number because quite a number of people attempt suicide, wake up next day still alive, and don't tell anybody. And based on that, there is no way we can provide therapists. No economy in the world can provide therapists who will give you somewhere between 3 and 10 visits to try to stop suicidal ideas with these vast numbers. So we need something that is going to be able to change that scenario. We, in my charity, the Australian Suicide Prevention Foundation, I'm pleased to have Michael Cassar here, who was chairman of the foundation at the time. We did a survey of the over 2,000 people using Resolve Strategic, who do lots of these political surveys. And the answer was 57% of people freeze. If someone says, I wish I was dead, I won't be here much longer. And they are afraid, they don't know what to say, or they're afraid they're going to make it worse. So the problem is we can't keep doing the same thing. And there is no more money. Any government agency, everybody will tell you there is no more money to spend on this because, of course, if they give money to one organization, they take it away from another. That's the only way they can do it, or they put up the taxes. So the solution we came up with some years ago is something that really nobody else apparently had ever thought about, which is activate the inner circle connections. Teach the people closest to the person involved what to say. But it doesn't mean the whole population goes into training. It's just you realize that there's this particular website sitting in the background, standing guard. And the website's called whatdoisay.org. We call it .org because we hope to make it international. And it gives people the phrases that people like me and counselors and therapists would say if somebody said to them, I want to kill myself. It's got over 500 phrases that are designed to persuade people, and you don't have to learn them. You just look at the website, pick one, and send it. And each message actually acts as an emotional safety net. Each message, you get one message if you're suicidal, you think, oh, Uncle Joe cares about me. And then you get 3, 4, 5, 6 messages from friends, colleagues, whatever. And it starts to be a nuisance because it's wrapping around you. And then if this keeps happening over a number of days, then you have this thing wrapped around you of people saying, I care, I want to help, it will pass, we promise we'll be there for you. And if you're going to attempt suicide, you have to convince yourself that nobody understands, nobody cares, nobody wants me. And it's very difficult to do that when you've got all these messages. And this is just a schematic I asked AI to drop, but that's really what it is. People with their phones sending messages. And the reason I emphasize phones is the vast majority of people are not really able to have a one-to-one ongoing conversation about something very sensitive and very tricky, whereas everybody, especially young people, prefer messages sent to them in text, and we allow you to cheat. We have added in AI onto our website, so the AI is continuously willing to give you the next 5 messages you could send, pick one. And we actually got an award for innovation from the Suicide Prevention Australia. So they obviously thought this is an excellent idea. Because I'm a clinical academic, being one of the hats I used to wear, let me give you some research. And the first line is the one that says it. Nearly 750,000 people. He selected 118 studies only out of 21,000. So it's about 0.5% of the studies were really high quality. And the firm conclusion was social support reduces suicidal thoughts, plans, attempts, and deaths. So that's, if you like, the proof. People say, well, have you done research? We're not going to reinvent the wheel with 750,000 people. And indeed, Suicide Prevention Australia, who are the peak body in Australia, just happened to state in what we know to be true: community connection is one of the most powerful factors for suicide prevention. The CDC is called the Centers for Disease Control in the United States, and they actually say connecting to community and culture are key protective factors. I was just having a discussion last week with a psychiatrist from Johns Hopkins Hospital as part of the Rotary Action Group for Mental Health, and he was described as a major step forward. That's really quite a flattering description of the service. Pat McGorry thinks it's great. And indeed, Calvin Biag has recently been appointed chair of Rotaract in all of Australia and Timor-Leste and Papua New Guinea. And he actually went from saying, I'm really overwhelmed with all the meetings I've got to go to can I join the board of the Australian Suicide Prevention Foundation, because he thinks this is great. And then for those of you who are aware of the Oscar Wilde phrase, imitation is the most sincere form of flattery, although I will tell you he copied that from somebody else. Sane UK, a major charity in Australia, in Britain, involved in suicide prevention, replicated our website, lock, stock and barrel. I'm sure the letter of approval is in the mail. So what do we say to people? Well, we have defined it into ask, say, practical, follow-up. My sense of alliteration for ASPF. But ask is, how are you? And not just how are you, full stop, or are you okay, full stop. It's on a 0 to 10 scale, how are you? So that stops people simply saying, yes, I'm fine. And then I know the books say you should say to people, are you thinking about suicide? That's not appropriate to our culture. So what we say is, do you wish you did not wake up in the morning? And everybody knows what you mean. And if they then think, then you would go on to say, have you been thinking of doing something to yourself? And how strong are those thoughts? And then what would you say to someone when they tell you, yes, I am having suicidal ideas? Well, a useful thing is, if I had your problems, would you advise me to die? Because, we would never advise a friend to die if they had a problem or kill themselves. So why is the person we're worried about telling themselves that something has gone wrong? And the useful things about the inner circle saying things and getting involved in suicide prevention is that they can say things like, I need you in my life, so don't go. Or I want my kids to grow up knowing you. And that is obviously a very personal but very powerful thing to say. And I suppose this is just another graphic we dreamt up, where basically personal contacts have intense power. Oh, and then just one of the things you might just a bit of interest is, what does a last resort psychiatrist do? So 6 weeks into starting treatment of this woman who'd been badly depressed for 15 years, but was still able to get through medical school, and part of her specialist training in pediatrics, sent me a thank you and goodbye email, because I'd been asked to see her by our psychiatrist. I knew the end was near. And so I started ringing her. Once, I was going to be a once-off phone call, and my second opinion was, yes, you are going to die. So I thought, can you ring me tomorrow? So then I started ringing her every night, and every morning asked, would you send me 3 numbers, please? How anxious are you on a 0 to 10 scale? How depressed are you? And how suicidal are you? And if the numbers were bad, I would make a quick call then, but otherwise it was every night. After 6 weeks, as I say, I got this email at 2 o'clock in the morning, which she thought I would read at 8 or 9 the following morning. But like all psychiatrists, I'm sure at 2 o'clock in the morning I was watching TV. So, and she wrote me this letter when months later, well, 18 months later when she was well. I was angry with you for stopping me when I was, and I won't go into the details of what she was doing, for such a long time. But today I want to say thank you with conviction from the bottom of my heart. While trapped under the crushing weight of worthlessness, your daily, consistent contact demonstrated to me that you thought I was worthy. This unconventional approach saved my life, David. So it's just an example that one person pouring in intensive contact could change things. I didn't do anything particular with her medication, but I just dug my way into her mind, basically. So multiple people doing this briefly can have something along the same effect. And so this is just a summary of what it is. It's a service that, as I say, will just sit on guard in the background. They are medically approved words, so you don't have to worry, am I saying the right thing? Our psychologist, our GP, we've all looked at them, so they are medically approved. It is set up now to be multilingual, both for migrants to Australia, who, of course, don't know the way and really don't want the embarrassment of going through the system. And indeed, as I say, we hope to make it multinational. And it's available 24/7. So as soon as there's a problem, people can start sending messages. And in between appointments, even if you do manage to get an appointment with a professional, the next appointment will be a week later, typically. What does anybody say or do during that week? So we tell you what to say or do. And as we say, anytime, anywhere, no waiting. If you've got the internet, you can have it. That's why India are so interested in this. They've got huge amounts of internet connection there. And it's no cost. In fact, by reducing emergency services will actually save countries money. And I write to various organizations in Australia saying, do you want to partner with us? Nobody answers because we take a totally different approach, saying we don't need any staff, we don't need any offices, we don't need to train anybody, just tell people about the website. Okay, and it's private. Sometimes families will deal with these sorts of scenarios themselves, a few friends, and nobody needs to know, oh, Joe or Mary have to go off to see a specialist repeatedly. Now, as Andrew said when he was introducing me, I am delighted to have joined Rotary. I do see it as a new dimension in life. And, as I say, surrounded by people who want to make a difference. But I'm also, of course, grateful to the board members of our Suicide Prevention Foundation. Nobody in our foundation gets any money for anything. No salaries, no retainers, no anything. And the various committees in Rotary. Sri Lanka had a problem. Dr. Suresh McCandam asked me would I do something. So we wrote this website initially for them and launched it in January. And they are trying to publicize this now around Sri Lanka. And so it has a lot of potential if anybody knows about it. So I look down the track and I think, I presume no. Has anybody here put up your hand? You've ever heard of Luvox? One person. Good. All right. So Luvox, but if I say put up your hands for Prozac, everybody's heard about Prozac. And the difference is they're basically the same drug, and Luvox came out first, but they didn't get much publicity, so it basically faded away. And that's that's the risk that's going to happen with our website. So unless we find people who will actually organize publicity for us, and that's not something I can do, or even donate to buy publicity, but we're not really chasing money, we're chasing publicity. We want people to actually just try and publicize the existence of this organization, of this website. And I will ask your opinion. What I've been told after talking about this to a certain extent is it's a bit daunting for people to be told about suicide and suicide prevention and so on, even though, as someone was saying to me just before the meeting today, he personally believes every family in Australia, directly or indirectly, has been affected by suicide or attempted suicide. And even if it's not by that, by somebody who is mentioning suicide and saying, I want to be dead. It's a huge, frightening scenario. So should we expand the website questions and include talk about anxiety and depression? Because it's the same sort of thing. People don't know what to say to somebody who says, I've got terrible anxiety or I've got terrible depression. Or are we diluting the cause of suicide prevention because there are so many other services available for anxiety and depression? But we don't want to frighten people. And as I say, the unique thing about this is that it's now something people can do when they hear, because the reason people are paralyzed is they don't know what to do. And what you do is very simple. Go onto this website, push a button. And one of the things I didn't mention or skip the slide somehow is another unique thing about this website is the person who is at risk, the person who's saying, oh, life is terrible, they don't have to say, can you help me? You can just pick up there's something not right with your nephew, your niece, your sibling, your colleague at work. And when you're at home in the evening, start sending them messages. And we have it set up to start off with, can I talk to you about something personal? You don't just come straight out, you introduce it, and then if they say, yeah, that's okay, then you can slowly build up to saying, I'm worried about you because of A, B, and C. Then you can go on to say, have you actually wished you didn't wake up in the morning, and so on. So the person doesn't have to ask for help, it can just be delivered to them. And Bianca Carmona, a freelance journalist, is here with us, luckily, and she helped put together some of these things as to what it is that we want. I'm, as I say, I'm not a marketer. I don't know what we want, but what I really like is her phrase at the bottom. You already know someone who needs this website. You just don't know who yet.
Thank you very much, David, not only for presenting a very difficult topic in a very clear and positive way, but for helping us understand what we can do to help people in our lives when they're distressed. As a university lecturer, I deal with a lot of students from a wide range of ethnic backgrounds, including Australians. Most of the students, including Australian students, have a deep sense of shame around mental health. I hear about anxiety, depression, and worse as an educator, and we're meant to, refer the students to in-house help. The in-house help is only available from 9 to 5 on Monday through Friday. That's not when the problems happen. Have you thought about engaging with the different universities and their student support teams to get this app out and available to students in the wider community?
No, I haven't actually approached universities as such, and that's a very good suggestion. And I think particularly as you say, there's such a stigma, not just about thoughts of suicide, but about anxiety and depression, that it does encourage me, and I'll have to talk with my board about enlarging the questions so that they start off at a more innocuous level and can build up if necessary. Thank you. Sorry.
David, just as you were finishing up, I put into Claude, what should the question you asked, and what it says, I'm just wondering if, how you would, whether this is picking up your website or whether you would agree. Says, asked directly, are you thinking about suicide? That direct language doesn't plant the idea. Listen without trying to fix it right away. So would that fit with what's on your website?
Well, Claude and I are good friends, and if I put it into Claude, it would pick up my approach and more or less tell me the difference. Look, basically, yes, asking people about suicide does not put the idea in their head. How you ask determines whether or not they will be open with you. And that's why, having done this for 30, 40 years, I know it's better to be more gentle and lead in progressively. So on our website, we've got about a dozen questions about how to ask about suicide, and they just slowly escalate. So I think it is more in keeping with the Australian culture, and indeed the Irish culture and British culture, is to progressively ask. But so I suppose what people are saying is you have to ask. It becomes a matter of opinion whether you ask bluntly out straight or you start off with something more innocuous, as I say. But yes, you are correct that asking about it reduces risk. It does not increase risk.
Thanks, Dennis. Just as you're going through the slides, it looked like amongst the suicide deaths skewed male and attempted suicide skewed female. And if I saw that right, which I may not have, but is the questions, is there a sort of a gender component as to how you approach people and what questions you might use?
I don't want to go into details, but the reason what you're saying is quite correct. 3/4 of deaths from suicide are males with a median age of 45. So people in the peak of their careers, with families growing, but also, of course, with divorces peaking around that time, they are the ones at risk of death. Women attempt suicide. 3/4 of the attempts at suicide are in women. Women are more in touch with their emotions. Things hurt them, I think, more than they hurt males emotionally, and I think that is why. But the numbers are just staggering, whether it be male or female. The commonest cause of death in Australia between the age of 15 and 50 is suicide.
David, congratulations on what you and your board have done. This is really, really important work. Just a couple of things. I'm really happy to see that you've got into the different languages on your site. So important. We know that a number of different cultures really struggle to talk about feelings or to share within their community that they're vulnerable. So being able to have it in different languages, I think, is going to really help, and having guidance on how to talk about it is good. In terms of getting the messages out, I think it was an excellent idea around the universities, but also clearly, social media is the way with, the younger population around having something really simple messages to get out where, it's in their face regularly. So those questions to ask are coming forward, but yeah, well done.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Another David. I've just found it on the internet, of course. Thank you very much for that. That's really useful. I couldn't find it on the App Store. I've got an iPhone and I go to the App Store. I've typed in a couple of things. Is there an app that you can download?
No, it's not an app. We had a previous app, which is the one that won the award, called Prevent a Suicide, What to Say, but that's too long a name. And this website is designed to act like an app. There's some technical jargon name for it. And indeed, if you stay on the website for more than 5 minutes, or if you go back to the website on a second visit, the system picks it up and says, do you want to install this on your phone? So it installs automatically as if it were an app. Thank you for the question.
We done. So in a practical sense, David, if someone calls at 7 o'clock on a Friday night and says, I can't take this anymore, what should I do? What should I do or say? Message.
Well, exactly. And that's what we're there for. As I say, 57% of people freeze. They don't know what to say. We would say just, flick on the website and it's there. So you start asking some of the questions that are listed under Ask, and then it moves on to what you can say. And we have a button called Help Choosing Messages. And if you just, while you're talking, or even if typically these are text conversations, the AI will give you a range of questions that are questions you can ask and things you can say.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Dan. That was very informative. And the traditional gift, 200% socks made from wilderness wear.
If it was 200%, it must have been made in Ireland.
200%. Let's say Australian socks. Like you can do